Oh, busy place. Bugmen snatching cattle. Spirits walking. Smiley missing.
Fallout 2 set out to be bigger and more intricate than its predecessor, especially when it came to side quest. Unlike the first game, where objectives were often simple, like fetching a radscorpion tail for Razlo or wiping out some raiders, Fallout 2's quests were designed to be multi-layered, spanning multiple locations with branching outcomes. This interconnected design encouraged exploration, leading players to stumble upon even more adventures along the way. Some featured complex variables that put the original to shame. But with ambition came limitations, and tight deadlines meant that many of these quests never made it into the final game. Today, we're diving into 10 lost and forgotten quests, what they were, and what could have been.
Torr be telling us about bugs that walk on 2 feet and steal Brahmin. Shook him up.
In Klamath, you'll run into Torr, a tribal whose Brahmin are being mutilated by mysterious bugmen. He'll incoherently ask you for help, saying, "Meet Torr. Bugmen take moo-moos at night. Torr scared. Help Torr?" However, if you have low intelligence, he instead channels his inner Shakespeare. Well, as I've said, they are nocturnal in their feeding habits. I sure could use some assistance in guarding the Brahmin. Will you kill any bugmen you see near the Brahmin? You can reply, yes, of course. I'll help you fend off the predation of your family's Brahmin by these nefarious bugmen. This is a great example of how drastically low intelligence alters your experience. If you agree to help him, you're transported to another map where you can fight the radscorpions attacking his herd. Alternatively, you can help the Dunton Brothers, a pair of twisted twins who steal cattle to make dry meat jerky. They'll ask you to scare Torr off, and you'll get some experience and jerky for helping them rustle the cattle. Helping them also triggers one of my favorite moments in the entire game. Now, normally there are 2 Brahmin in the pen behind their house, but helping them rustle Torr's cattle spawns a 3rd creature, which is a cool little detail of reactivity. Except the new one uses the same code as the Brahmin from Arroyo. This means that killing it triggers the game over screen when you try to leave the map.
Chosen, the village dies. All of our futures die too.
It's my headcanon that this cow is the living embodiment of your tribe's god, and killing it dooms everyone you know. Outside of this quest, there's a line where you can mention the Dunton's cattle seems to have been stolen and then rebranded. After accusing them, you can either back down or start a fight, but the latter has a chance of turning the entire fucking town hostile. However, there was once a cut quest where you could expose their cattle rustling. On the map where you protect Torr's Brahmin, there's a mysterious item called radscorpion limbs. They have no use and no value, so there's no reason to pick them up. They're still mentioned in the guide, which states, radscorpion limbs and pile of radscorpion parts. These bug parts have been fashioned into a charming ensemble, making them suitable for scaring the locals, Brahmin rustling, or high tea. There's a placeholder graphic for the radscorpion parts item, but it was never completed. In the barn behind the Dunton's house, you can find dead Brahmin, jerky, knives, and a scorpion tail in the refrigerator, essentially proving their guilt. After finding the limbs, you could confront the brothers and say, "I thought I saw a pile of bug parts over there. Do you know what that is?" They'd reply, "Bug parts? We don't know nothing about no bug parts. What are you talking about?" You could respond, "Well, I saw a pile of bug parts that had straps and buckles, so that they looked as though they could be worn as a costume. They were all piled right over by where you 2 were standing." They'd retort, "You're crazy. Those are just left over from some radscorpions we killed. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket. We, use their venom as one of the secret ingredients in our dry meat recipe." The writing ends here, but it seems you could have somehow exposed them afterwards, and it would have been satisfying to bring them in for their crimes or take them out.
Not much to tell. Typical gang of dumb bullies and angry nobodies. They're holed up a bit south of here, in the Monte Carlo suites. They think they're tough, but anytime they tangle with the fiends, they get torn right up.
In the den, the player can find Lara, a gang leader who works for Metzger and his band of slavers. She sends the player to scout out a church being guarded by another gang working for Metzger. If you convince Tyler, the gang's leader, to let you enter the church, you'll discover they're guarding chemicals. The player returns to Lara, and she reveals these chemicals are transported by caravan to New Reno, where they're used to make jet. She now sends you to ask Metzger if they can have permission for a gang war against Tyler. Metzger agrees, and then the player tries to find a weakness in Tyler's gang. If the player has a high speech skill, they can learn that Tyler's friend won big while gambling, and that the gang is going to have a party to celebrate. Afterwards, the player and Laura's gang attack the church. The player is rewarded and the quest ends. Dialogue suggests there is one more quest stage where you track Tyler to the party and kill him. It's unknown where this was intended to appear, but it's possible it was planned for the cut residential area of the den. This area can still be accessed by pressing 3 on the map screen, though there's no evidence of the quest actually occurring there. The party never occurring was always a glaring continuity error to me, and this would have made the quest more coherent.
They'll stay here with me and I'll raise them myself. It's a shame that they have to grow up without their parents. But to tell you the truth, it's a lot better than growing up with their parents, everything considered. Better an orphan than a cannibal, I guess?
Perhaps the most notorious characters in the entire game are the children in the den. When passing by, they'll steal your equipment, and killing them will give you the child killer trait, locking you out of the majority of the game's quest. Supposedly, there was a cut quest where you help get the children off the street and into an orphanage. Some players have theorized it would have been run by Mom, the owner of Mom's Diner. This would make sense given that she's named Mom, she's perhaps the only truly good NPC in the town, and the children are named Orphan internally. However, I haven't been able to find any evidence of this quest actually existing. Both Mom and the children have no dialogue about it, and there's nothing in either script referencing it. I'm not sure if this idea came from a long-lost developer quote, if I'm just missing something, or if this was entirely fabricated. If true, this would have been a great quest that would have helped you avoid getting pickpocketed, though.
They are not slaves, they are our servants. We have given them homes, food, clothing, and a purpose. We have given them a life.
Vault City has a caste system, where citizens are revered and servants are essentially slaves that are treated as a lower class. You can even sell your own companions to the city at the Servant Allocation Center. These servants are bought from slavers, and according to several servants, they were tribals taken from their nearby villages. There's remnants of an unused village which would have appeared near Vault City. Player would have been sent there by an unknown Vault City NPC, who would ask you to take out the mole rats plaguing the village. While this sounds altruistic on the surface, their intentions were anything but. The leader of the village, Connor, would have told the player these creatures were the only thing saving them from being enslaved and turned into servants. Dialogue suggests you would have been paid for killing the critters and dooming the village. A variable tracks the date when they would have been attacked, and perhaps the villagers would have disappeared afterwards. On the other hand, the player could collect some rifles and a shotgun so the villagers could defend themselves. There's also some variables suggesting they needed food to survive. The player could have apparently found and delivered these items to them, but no dialogue was ever written for either interaction. Afterwards, the town would be able to protect itself, and it would apparently grow larger over time. There is only variables for 2 stages of growth, but there's seemingly dialogue for 4 stages. A month after saving the village, it would reach stage 2, and if you talk to Connor, he'd say, "Welcome back. Things are going well. We're going to work on expanding the village. We're still building. We're hoping to expand the walls again in the next month." 1 month later, he'd now tell you, "Hello again. Things have been going well, as you can see. Look around if you have the time." After yet another month, he'd say, "Greetings. The village has expanded again as we have hoped. You are welcome as always." It apparently would have grown one final time, and he would have said, "We have nothing to fear from Vault City any longer, and we will be able to live here in peace. Thank you again, Wanderer." This was a great idea that would have expanded on the slavery element of Vault City, and featured a settlement that grew progressively larger, easily making it one of the most ambitious side quests. Unfortunately, we can probably assume that's also why it was left out, as the village would have required 5 separate maps for it to actually expand like this over time.
Imagine New Vegas if there was no Mr. House-type fella keeping the peace, then give everybody a gun and a jet addiction. Town's run by a bunch of crime families. No law to speak of. Make trouble and you wind up buried in Golgotha outside town. The scuzz factor's off the charts. Non-stop whoring and drugs. Couldn't walk down the street without getting asked to star in a porn movie.
At the Golden Globes porn studio in New Reno, you could ask the Corsican brothers about their film production by saying, "How do you film? I mean, come on. You'd need cameras, film, projectors. Where would you get all that stuff? To which they reply, we lucked out. We don't need any of that Stone Age crap. We stumbled across a working holographic projector. No bulky equipment, no fuss, and no unsightly mess. This line of questioning ends there, but it's actually a remnant of a cut quest. Unused dialogue reveals the Chosen One could have said, really? What specs does the projector have? To which they'd reply, well, we ain't hit capacity on the QEWB drive yet. Near as I can tell, it's about a 300 gigabyte high-density memory cube. Even though the Windblow's 57 OS eats up 70 to 75% of that, we could film for 100 years on that cube. You could say, where's this cube now? Can I see it? They'd reply, no, we try to keep everyone out of the film room. Everybody wants to throw in their 2 cents when it comes to editing and storage. Besides, the cube's gold to us. Wouldn't want anything to happen to it. You could say, makes sense. God knows what use some thief could put that cube to if they got their hands on it. Oh well. Bye. The dialogue ends there, but it implies you could have stolen it. The cube is only mentioned a single time in the entirety of the game files, and it's completely unknown who you would have given it to.
You did it. Excellent. You have performed a valuable service for Vault City. Please accept this as a token of our appreciation. To think a band of raiders was causing so much trouble.
New Reno has a subplot where the Bishop family hired mercenaries to attack Vault City. These raiders use a difficult-to-find base near the city as a hideout, named the Mercenary Caves. The player can travel there and destroy the raiders, but there's nothing else to do and the entire location is a bit underwhelming. There are some traps where you can fall into the caverns below and then you're immediately attacked by radscorpions. Chris Avallone expanded on where this idea came from. Quote, if I'd had the time, Vault City wasn't planned. I'd have put a little more love into the Raiders' Caves, as they suffered a bit in comparison to Vault City and New Reno. The Raiders' Cave was largely a combat location, and it was an homage to our all-too-real Team Scorpion mascot, Spud. But even so, it could have used more meat to it. Spud got out of his aquarium one night, and we never knew what happened to him. But I became apprehensive about suddenly walking into a darkened room or retrieving a pen or pencil when it fell beneath a desk." Unquote. It seems that Spud was intended to appear here as a difficult boss battle, as the NPC has an entry alongside the other characters found in the area, but he was left out for whatever reason. He was even mentioned on the official website where it states, "Spud is our team mascot. Spud eats crickets and stays under his log most of the day. Spud is big, black, and has a very large tail that he likes to show off if you take his log away. Spud is an emperor scorpion. Spud has been pretty boring. All he does is lie under his log. We leave him alone." Years later, Tim Kaine talked about him in a post on the Duck and Cover forums. Quote, "Spud died very shortly after Fallout 1 was shipped. We were all very sad, and also afraid to touch him, in case he was faking it. Eventually I picked him up, decided against a burial at sea. He was a very big scorpion, and instead tossed him into the dumpster behind Interplay." Unquote. Despite being cut, dying, and unceremoniously tossed into a dumpster, he's immortalized as one of the mole rats in Redding. The Tibbetts design document shows that Spud was intended to appear again in Van Buren, and would have been the strongest radscorpion, but he was cut once again. There's also an NPC named Shadow who walks here. He only has floating text, but Chris Avallone revealed he was part of a cut quest to defeat the mercenaries. Quote, "He's pretty much a neutral. We were going to allow Charisma Boy type characters to do more with him, but we ran out of time. Basically, he serves as a guide for the raiders and help them find their current base of operations. In exchange, they pay him with a slight amount of money and alcohol. Still, they treat him badly. So originally there was going to be a minor adventure seed, where you could talk him out of serving with the raiders, which would end their attacks, since they wouldn't be able to find their way around the southern foothills anymore. Just behind the scenes stuff. You can't do anything with him, and he's not a friendly guy. So don't worry about killing him." Unquote. Sulek still has a line about him when you ask him to consult the spirits.
"The wind moves to secret places."
Having a speech-based option to defeat the raiders would have made it into a better location overall.
The strain of plant the scientists were growing mutated, gaining a measure of sentience. It killed the laboratory technicians and took over the laboratory in which it was first conceived. It took a massive concentration of resources to crush the being, and this left the Shi poverty-stricken. They disappeared into the wastes.
The Raider's location has a quest where you need to find 3 dog tags to open a safe. The Shi were going to have a similar quest linked to the terminal entries in the Steel Palace. In the final version, you can guess or hack the password, but originally you needed to find it. There were 3 torn sheets of paper that when combined would give you access to the terminal entries. Notably, one of these passwords was Donkey Punch. I'm guessing the torn papers didn't make it in because they were related to a cut quest. The biology database states that she had some sort of Xeno research project, but this was discontinued when the specimen they were experimenting on disappeared. The entry adds that it was apparently destroyed or stolen by the Hubologists. Xeno research is most likely a parody of Scientology's Xeno deity, an alien ruler who brought his people to Earth millions of years ago. This is all potentially a reference to an unused item called Decomposing Body, which is a partially rotting body of a humanoid creature. It could definitely pass as alien, and something this wacky would fit right into the rest of the game. It seems plausible you needed to steal the decomposing body back from the Hubologist. There's also an entry for an unused Hubologist holodisk, and perhaps it was related, though that's only speculation. Notably, Dr. Xing is only mentioned in these terminal entries and is stated to be in charge of their biological research programs. Perhaps the character was originally intended to make a physical appearance and would have been a part of the quest. Tactics has a list of items they considered adding as Easter eggs for fans of the first 2 entries. Bizarrely, the decomposing body is a part of the list, despite it being cut from Fallout 2. Additional interactions between the Shi and Hubologists could have been a nice addition, though cutting this alien subplot might have been for the best, as it would have made San Francisco even more inconsistent.
Right. Me and a human named Jacob built this place around that old bank about 60 years ago. Anyone's welcome here, long as they keep the peace.
The good ending of Broken Hills revolves around helping Marcus clean up the town. To do this, the player needs to imprison some of the anti-mutant faction and find the people who have gone missing recently. However, it seems there was once a third major problem that needed solving. You can ask the generic miners about the important people in town and they'll mention Chad, the leader of the caravan company, and he still states he's responsible for the livelihood of the town. In the final version, he has almost no dialogue and no real purpose though. Marcus still has an unused line where he would have asked you to check on him.
Well, getting kinda worried about one of our caravan guys, Chad. He might be skimming. You up to checking him out for me?
There are variables tracking rumors about Chad in both Gecko and Broken Hills. After questioning various NPCs, you could discover that Chad had been overcharging for the uranium shipments to Gecko and was skimming the additional profits. Another variable tracks him becoming suspicious of the player, and if this happened, he would prepare to skip town. If you didn't have hard evidence and talk to Marcus, he'd say,
Keep your eye on him, will you? I want to catch him red-handed.
After getting proof, Marcus would reply,
Well, in that case, we'd better be sure to stop him. Want to come along?
You could then arrest Chad on your own or bring Marcus along. You could also kill Chad or let him escape if he bribed you $1,000. Regardless of how you handled it, a new boss would be promoted to take Chad's place running the caravan. It seems that if you killed Chad, Bill would no longer let you do caravan runs for the settlement. If you killed or arrested Chad, some of the anti-mutant humans like Jacob wouldn't talk to you anymore. Generic ghouls would mention that the humans might want revenge for what happened. They also would have commented on how the human should be ashamed for his actions. The scripting is partially set up, and it seems likely they just ran out of time for this. Some lines that were already scripted were removed later on because this was cut out. Broken Hills is easily one of the least consistent areas, and this would have helped flesh out the mutant racism element of the city, making the town a bit more cohesive.
That's me, stupid. I run the, gambling establishment here.
There was going to be a character named 3-Card Monte in New Reno. He would have had a tribal bodyguard named Rico, who, quote, looks like he's going to eat bricks. Both would have been found on Virgin Street, and Monte would have offered card games he could gamble on. When speaking to him for the first time, he'd say, 3-Card Monte's the name, and the game's the same as the name. Slap down 20 chips and we'll get down to it. If you accepted, the player would be asked to pick one of 3 cards. However, the game was rigged and you would always lose. If you had high perception, you could notice he was cheating though. If you confronted him, it would result in either a fight or you getting some of your money back. There was an obscure way of winning though. In the Desperado Casino and in a grave in Golgotha, you can find marked cards. They have no purpose in the final version, but their description states that every card is a red queen. If you planted the marked cards in his inventory, you'd get this message while playing. Monte turns over the card. It is the Queen of Hearts. He seems paralyzed with shock. It seems you could continue to play until he ran out of money, but it's here that his true value would come into play. He had some sort of valuable item that he could give you. A card that featured a man with a strange hat wielding a club. I have no idea what this item was or what it was intended for though. Normally you could buy accurate information about several major quests in New Reno for $200 each. But if you turned down the unique card, you could get information out of him for free. This included the location of Pretty Boy Lloyd, how to find your stolen car, who was responsible for the overdose death of Richard Wright's son, and more, which would have helped significantly. The scripting was only partially finished, and it seems that once again, time played a factor in its removal.
Beautiful. Look, this is drug addiction, not an STD. Only cure is to go cold turkey, and that's a real difficult option with Jet. Oh, for fuck's sake, it can't be done, alright? It's a goddamn drug, not a bacterial infection.
In the Malamute Saloon in Redding, there's a jet-addicted prostitute named Fannie Mae. If you're playing as a male character who doesn't have low intelligence, you can buy her services. After fucking her, she tells you that she only sells herself because she owes money to the owner of the saloon, Lou. She wants to leave town with her boyfriend, and you can give her $200 to help out. She states that her boyfriend and her will be leaving town. However, if you return, she asks you for even more money to pay off her debt. If you give her more and then talk to Lou, she reveals that Fannie is just using you to fuel her jet addiction. She'll mention that Fannie could OD if you continue, and you can continue to give her more money as many times as you want, but there are no additional interactions and nothing ever changes. However, dialogue suggests you could originally help her get clean. You could have expressed that she was going to kill herself if she continued down this path. It seems you could have helped cure her addiction if you had both a high speech skill and the antidote for Jet. On the other hand, you could apparently give her too much money, causing her to overdose on Jet and die. Afterwards, Lou would tell you, "I can't believe that you were dumb enough to give Fannie enough money all at once to overdose herself. You're just an idiot, ain't ya?" Afterwards, the other prostitutes wouldn't be interested in being with you because of what you did. This is interesting because you can't actually buy sex from any of the other women, suggesting additional unused functionality. The script was also supposed to teleport you to the bedrooms in the back of the bar when buying sex, but that doesn't happen either. Jet addiction is the most significant theme of Redding, and the ability to kill or save one of its victims would have been a poignant addition. These lost quests showcase just how much more depth and reactivity the developers originally envisioned, offering alternate solutions, growing settlements, and deeper moral dilemmas. Some of these cut ideas would have fleshed out the map in meaningful ways, making areas like Vault City, the Den, and New Reno feel even more alive and responsive to player choices. Others, like the Orphanage quest, remain shrouded in mystery, leaving us to wonder what could have been. Despite these cuts, Fallout 2 remains one of the most reactive and expansive RPGs ever made, with a level of player freedom that few games have matched since. Some of these changes would have made Fallout 2 into an even better game. Ultimately though, all of this was left on the cutting room floor.